During these last few years, our society has become incredibly dependent on the internet. Yet only in 1995, less than 1% of people use it. But now, billions of people utilize it every day. Just a while ago, the power went out where I was living, taking down the internet. At that time, it meant two things. One, I couldn't finish my homework, and two, I couldn't go on YouTube instead. So while people were forced to physically interact with one another, a thought occurred to me. What if the internet just suddenly ceased to exist? At first, I was like, how bad could that be? People would actually have to meet each other now, a few problems here and there shouldn't be too bad. However, I quickly realized how optimistic I was. The problem is that the internet is way too essential in modern society. It hasn't become something that is part of our society, but instead something that our society depends upon to function properly. So let's imagine a scenario where the internet actually went out. So before we start, what is the internet? Well, it isn't something that's reliant on a single machine or cable. Instead, it's a wide network of connections around the globe, and access to it is essentially universal, making it very reliable. A scenario where the internet went out would almost be impossible due to the number of backup systems we've created for it. So in this hypothetical situation, where a solar flare hit Earth or alien cyber attacked us, what would actually happen? To begin with, many of the modern communication systems we use today would stop functioning, meaning that many people wouldn't be able to call or text. We might even be forced to handwrite letters and send them through post offices. Many of the school systems we have today would also shut down as a result. And now, with the ongoing pandemic, online schooling would become impossible. Unfortunately, though, education would be the least of our worries. Smart energy grids have become major power suppliers which rely on the internet to function properly. So think about hospitals that relied on these for a moment. If a hospital with hundreds of patients had its power go out, the results could be detrimental. Patients in critical conditions could be relying on a multitude of machines just to survive. Patients' records and appointment schedules would become inaccessible. Urgent treatments and surgeries would have to be held back, and the medical emergencies could easily overtake what hospitals could handle. A wide panic would start to arise as the medical system could potentially fail. The financial sector would also face loss after loss. Electronic currency wouldn't work anymore, so you'd have to say goodbye to your credit cards and PayPal accounts. Companies that now rule the world, like Apple, Google, and Amazon, would face enormous financial deficits and may become practically obsolete. The stock market would freeze as many people wouldn't be able to move money into or out of companies. Trade across the internet accounts for trillions of dollars annually. The loss for it would cause for an immediate cessation. The global economy may shatter as trillions of dollars would suddenly vanish. Thousands and maybe millions of people would become unemployed as a result. The more developed the country, the more severe the economic crisis, as entire industry sectors would either disappear or struggle to function due to the devastating losses. Even the military would be facing major setbacks, as today they use the internet from everything to data gathering to keeping soldiers in touch with their families. Military operations could potentially be set back by decades by the crisis that would come. This would also directly affect the daily lives of many people on much smaller scales as well. Imagine this. What if someone you knew urgently needed medical supplies and relied on a company like FedEx to deliver it with them? Well, without the internet, the driver won't be able to rely on his or her mobile GPS app, causing for the medical supplies to be dangerously late. Situations like this could become common. In fact, after a few days, the entire transportation grid would be facing difficulties. The transportation of food and other goods would become a major issue. The shelves of supermarkets and stores could be empty as people raid them out of fear and tension. Things go in the wrong directions, riots and protests could begin to form. These smaller scales of acts of violence could even escalate to war. The loss of the internet would be an enormous blow to intelligence agencies, and sharing information from one place to another would become an incredible hassle. It wouldn't be hard for a series of events to occur where we'd be facing conflicts between nations to grow worse. However, assuming that the world leaders are successful at preventing the urge to blow each other up, we have to face the fact that centuries worth of knowledge may be lost. Everything from the latest discoveries on Mars to fascinating information about the ancient Egyptians would all be gone. We'd have to spend time and effort all in covering all of these secrets all over again. I wouldn't even be able to describe the loss. The after effects would be felt for decades and maybe centuries after the crisis. Unfortunately, though, in reality, I've only scratched the surface on all the different possibilities. To be honest, these are just the possibilities that we believe could happen. If the internet actually happened to go out forever, the progress of humanity could potentially be completely set back by the disaster that would come. Problem after problem may crush the society we built up so far. However, don't start thinking that we should carefully take away our dependence on the internet to prevent something from that happening, because that wouldn't help matters either. Then we'd be pushing back the development of our species purposefully. Don't forget that we still are a resilient group of individuals that would come back from the setback. Problems and conflicts would certainly arise, but at a certain point, given time and effort, we'd heal from the repercussions. And before you continue wondering about all the other different possibilities that could happen with the massive shutdown of the internet, let me remind you that we've faced the loss of the internet before. Even though they were only temporary and limited to certain sectors of it, it's important to remember the fact that we've come back strong from it and learned from the situation. Large banks like Wells Fargo and enormous social media companies have lost their internet before and survived. In fact, we've been surviving without the internet for centuries. Hospitals are trained to be prepared to face many different situations, and communication wouldn't completely disappear, as we'd still be able to rely on radio signals, and many forms of transportation would still be working. And as I've said over and over again, the complete shutdown of the internet would be close to impossible. We have way too many backup systems in place, so don't sweat too much about such a scenario from happening. But all said and done, the internet is a blessing to have. Practically anything could be shared with the click of a button. You can FaceTime your grandparents that are halfway across the world. You can literally learn anything through a quick Google search. And I mean anything. How to cook pasta, how to cook burnt pasta, how to add 1+1, how to tie a tie, how to draw the 1889 Starry Night. And I could probably keep talking to you all day about this. The convenience of the internet is unparalleled, and it's a miracle for one thing to be able to do so much. Thank you.